Before every election, our representatives would like to make us think we're getting a tax break. And they're able to do it while at the same time actually raising our taxes because of a bit of magic they have in their kit bag. That magic is inflation. They reduce the tax rates, but the taxes we have to pay go up because we are automatically shoved into higher brackets by the effect of inflation. A neat trick. Taxation without representation.
What's going on? What's talk here? As you see from the intro video, Biden, I don't know, this inflation rate that we've been dealing with lately, I kind of wanted to better understand inflation. So I went to a Nobel Prize winning economist, Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman is Thomas Sowell's mentor. He learned from Thomas Sowell learned from him in the University of Chicago, if I remember correctly. And I found him very insightful how he is able to simply explain inflation, its effects, the cure and the cause of it. If you're looking forward to that, this will be at the end of the video, the cure for inflation. But right now, I'm just going to get into the effects and the cause of inflation. Inflation is a silent killer, right? As he said, Congress put up the solution that they save you on taxes. But in reality, if they don't do anything with inflation, you artificially get bumped up into a higher tax bracket, and your buying power is also affected. So I'm gonna go through some clips from his video, Understanding Inflation. If you don't want to watch my full commentary on it, as always, I have the link in the description below. So let's get into this first part of the video. And as always, I give my thoughts after the clip. Let's take a look.
Crawford's home after he'd spent a couple of days working out his federal and state income taxes for the year. For our benefit, he tried to estimate all the other taxes he had paid as well. In the end, though, he didn't discover much that will surprise anybody.
Inflation is going up. Everything's getting more expensive. No matter what you do, as soon as you walk out of the house, everything's going up. Your gas bills keep going up, electric bills, your gasoline. You could name 1,000 things that are going up, but just everything's going sky high. Your food. My wife goes to the grocery store. We used to live on, say, $60 or $50 every 2 weeks just for our basic food. Now it's $80 or $90 every 2 weeks. Things are just, they're going out of sight as far as expense to live on. Like I say, it's getting tough, and it seems like every month it gets worse and worse. And I don't know where it's going to end.
Wow, that perfectly illustrates what's going on with our current time in 2023. And it's always surprising why the saying says, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And this kind of makes me remember about arguments about why people want to end the Federal Reserve, because end of the day, Federal Reserve is the only federal department that never been audited in its entire history since its inception. This is baffling to me, right? And they keep raising interest rates because they're fighting what? Inflation, right? And people are saying this could be a signal for a recession. I'm already thinking we're in a recession, but they just don't want to tell you because they don't want you to panic. Nothing to see here. Economy's breaking at the seams, but they're trying to make everything seem like, we're going to go through a mild recession, according to CNN Business, even though all these banks are closing down. It seemed like every time, everywhere you look, a couple of months later, a bank is closing because they made the wrong bet or they bailed out the wrong bank. And this is one of the reasons why Thomas Jefferson was was very against national banks. And I don't know, it may not be in its title, but the Federal Reserve acts as a national bank. What it do, all the other banks follow. If a bank's about to mess up, the government comes in, fires some people. That don't sound like a nationalized bank system to you? The government can come in, fire all the executives because they're not doing their job. This all started with Franklin Roosevelt when he created the Federal Reserve, because he think he can control the economy. Now, the dollars were still tied to the gold standard, so he couldn't really create inflation like that. But this idea that an individual or an authority can steer the economy for an outcome, to me, it's folly. It's like you're messing with nature. It's man trying to play God, right? Because a lot of economists, like Milton Friedman is one of these economists, that makes the claim, and I agree with this claim, that they look at the 1920s. That's why they don't really talk about the 1920s. The 1920s was like industrial age, whatever. The government was a lot more hands off in the 1920s, and they recovered from the Great Depression a lot faster than what we experienced under Franklin D. Roosevelt. People were going to say, oh, if it wasn't for Franklin D. Roosevelt, we would have gotten out of the Great Depression. I believe that's a lie. Because you can make the argument. I mean, I'm making the argument now. He extended the Great Depression because he's in here interfering. Let's raise the crop prices here, and then the farmers couldn't sell anything because at the end of the day, you can get more money, but you're not selling at the same quantity for per unit. Like if you get 1,000 units, you sold it for $1, but then you artificially raise the price to $2, and people only buy 10. You lost money, and that's what Franklin Roosevelt was doing. He was trying to he was saying, oh, price controls, causing more inflation. People couldn't buy it. No, the economy wasn't recovering. He still had a high unemployment rate throughout his entire term. No matter how many times he got reelected, his unemployment rate was high. The only reason I think we even got out of the Great Depression was because the World War started. And that's what brought us out of the Great Depression. But to give this false credit to Franklin D. Roosevelt, I think it's people cherry picking history, honestly. Right? And this is what I talk about, like, history, you can build narratives around anything you want. But this is why I tend to look at it holistically. Okay, is an example in history where we were able to make it out of the economy without government intervention? Yes, there was, Kenny. 1920. 1920s had a Great Depression, only lasted a year. I don't know the exact date. Maybe I'll put it up here. But that's an example of we found a solution where the government don't have to get involved. But it's the same thing with these progressives, right? And it's all, obviously it had to be a Democratic president that had to get us into it. But people who are in favor of big government, they tend to try to create their own necessity. Like, oh, you need us. They create reasons for why we need them. Whether the economy crashes, banks, end of the day, that's what capitalism is about. The freedom to try and the freedom to fail. But the government wants to be your parent and say, oh, no, I don't want you to fail. And artificially prop you up. You never learn your lesson. You think you're invincible. And you go out and do even more reckless behavior. And this is what's going on with the banks right now. And this triggered because of what's going on with the First Republic Bank. And I'm like, why it keeps happening? We are in a recession. We got as much banks failing just like in 2008. But all of a sudden, it's not a recession. People have this idea that, we're just starting into a recession. No, we're already in it. But hey, I digress. I've been talking too much. This next clip is Milton Friedman is going to explain exactly how inflation works, and he's going to put it into a perfectly simple illustration. And I think this is the best breakdown of inflation I have seen so far. Let's take a look.
Nearly $6,000 of my earnings on taxes. That leaves me with a total of $12,000 to live on. That might seem like a lot of money, but 5-6 years ago, I was earning $12,000.
How does taxation without representation really affect how much the Crawford family has left to spend after it's paid its income taxes? Well, in 1972, Bob Crawford earned $12,000. Some of that income was not subject to income tax. After paying income tax on the rest, he had this much left to spend. 6 years later, he was earning $18,000 a year. By 1978, the amount free from tax was larger, but he was now in a higher tax bracket, so his taxes went up by a larger percentage than his income. However, those dollars weren't worth anything like as much. Even his wages, let alone his income after taxes, hadn't kept up with inflation. His buying power was lower than before. That is taxation without representation in practice.
Hey, that's the simplest way I've ever heard inflation explained to me. And I think this is why Milton Friedman was so influential in Thomas Sowell's lives and many people who read his books. He was an advocate for free market capitalism. He was an advocate for government, the hands-off approach. Right, a lot of people like to use Franklin Roosevelt as if it wasn't for him pushing all this intervention, the government intervention, the depression would have been worse. Milton Friedman was one of the people that argued that he made it. Franklin Roosevelt made it worse because he was trying to artificially raise the price of crops for farmers, so farmers can make a living, and all they did was deter people from buying crops, and then they had an oversupply, wasted product, and then he was like, okay, the government's gonna buy it. Which caused end of the day, when people think they know better than the system, right, without fully understanding the system, like Franklin Roosevelt did, they'll create laws and policies that do the opposite of what they intended to do because they don't understand how economics work or whatever endeavor they're trying to create these policies in. I mean, I don't know. It's just a thought I had in my head. And you guys let me know what you think in the comment section. But let's get into this next clip. This next clip is going to be about how to end inflation, right? And I think some of you guys already know where I'm going with this. I gave you some hints earlier in the video if you were paying attention. Let's take a look.
Paper and the accompanying book entry, or their counterparts in other nations, are growing more rapidly than the quantity of goods and services produced. The truth is, inflation is made in one place and one place only, here in Washington. This is the only place where there are presses like this that turn out these pieces of paper we call money. This is a place where the power resides to determine how rapidly the amount of money shall increase. What happened to all that noise? That's what would happen to inflation if we stopped letting the amount of money grow so rapidly.
And this is one of the biggest arguments for why we shouldn't be spending so much money, especially as a government entity, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of the ways the government fund this stuff is by printing more money. And then they throw this money into the supply, right? Lowers our buying power, right? Because at the time, let's say buying power was at 100%. And the government over crazy spending, and all their dollars are still valued at the same point as ours. But once they put the more of the money into the circulating into the economy, our buying power will go down because there's just more money out there. This is one of the reasons why I think the founding fathers, I think it was Thomas Jefferson specifically, he was so adamant that no one creates a national bank, and the Federal Reserve operates like a national bank. See how, like, and the reason why this video came to mind is because there was a lot of bank crashes, if you guys noticed, that's been going on in Biden's economy, and Biden has to come in, save them, fire the people. Doesn't that seem like that's a national bank? Like, wouldn't a national bank have the power to remove people from the board, right? If one bank failed, they'll just bail them out. 2008, Obama. Biden's trying to do the same thing. Like, it seemed like Biden's trying to make the economy seem stronger than what it really is. This is why, like, in 2021, they were fighting about, we're not really in a recession. They just want everything to, hey, nothing to see here, folks. There's nothing going on. And you see the economy like almost breaking at the seams because they know the economy is crashing. It seems like they're trying to control how it crashes. And I think a lot of Americans should really, really be watchful, observant, especially like people on the media, social media, not social media, but people in the mainstream media won't tell you this. Most journalists won't tell you this stuff. Now, the Republicans, right-wing media, they'll tell you this, though, because obviously they have an incentive to scrutinize Biden. And this is why I stress a lot for people to be more knowledgeable about these things. Don't get one side of the news or the other, right? But right now, we have a Democratic Senate, Democratic president. So right-wing media will be more open about their criticism of Joe Biden, but left-wing media won't, and left-wing media outnumber right-wing media. That's why I think one of the ways that the right should push back is trying to, I guess, establish more media, right, to compete, because there's a lot of left-wing media, and this is why the people in the middle are more influenced a little bit by the left-wing because there's just more of them. But I think in the future we have to rectify that. But hey, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you guys find this video helpful. Thanks for watching to the end of the video. I really do appreciate it. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.